Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this episode of 58 Home Online Interview. I am your host of tonight, Simon, and it's a great honor to have all of you joining us again. In today's interview, we have invited a special guest, Judi Paré, a real estate investor coach and founder and CEO of Plentitude. Together, we'll be discussing real estate investment, and we're going to talk about herself, how she went through the difficult time of her own and the pandemic. Today, I'll be asking Judi questions on behalf of you. And later, you can have your chance to ask your own questions to Judi as well by typing your question into the chat box in Zoom. Or if you're watching our streaming on YouTube, you can put your question on the comment section as well. And we can see your question in the Zoom room as well. All right, Judi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. I'm
All right,
excited to be able to share my story.
Absolutely, we are all happy to have you here, and we would love to hear your story. So to start off, how did you initially become curious about real estate investment, and what motivated you to establish Plentitude Inc.?
Well, first of all, it was out of necessity. So where I became interested in real estate was when my children were young. I worked in the airline industry. We had, my husband and I were looking for properties, and we were looking for something with an income suite because we wanted a live-in nanny, or we wanted to be able to offset some of our mortgage. So what we looked for was a property that would sort of serve us in two different ways. For accommodations for our nanny, or and reduce our overhead for having for the daycare and whatnot. So we were looking at it from a nanny perspective. And one of the other things is we had our brother-in-law who was recently divorced, and we wanted to have a property that allowed him to live in our home as well, because he had a child and we had three children, and it was just helpful to have to share accommodations and to sort of have two different families living in the same house. And then we wanted a unit as well for our nanny. So it really just came out of necessity and out of what we were trying to do with our family. So we bought a house with it had a basement, it had a room in the basement, it also had an income suite. Our brother-in-law lived with us first, and then he moved on to his own place, and we brought in a full-time nanny who had the apartment. And it was very helpful because I traveled a lot, and the nanny, in exchange for daycare, had free accommodations. So that was saving us close to $1,000 a month. So instead of collecting rent, what we did is we offset our daycare costs by not having to pay for a nanny full time, or not having to pay the full amount, because we were giving her accommodations and housing in exchange. So it was really out of necessity how we got into real estate. We had been watching TV and HGTV and all of those things years ago, and Income Properties was on, and we just thought that it was a good way for us to have a mortgage helper, or at least an expense helper in some way, shape, or form. So that's how we got involved in real estate. And then what motivated me to start Plentitude is I have two businesses, actually. I have a real estate development company, and I have an education company. So Plentitude started out as an education company. Started out as we would go into organizations and we would help people create content around various topics. And one of the topics, for example, was the home buying process. So we worked on a big project with TD on the home buying process. We worked with their mortgage agents, and we developed an online course for them. And we've done education in various industries, in manufacturing, in real estate, in wealth management and capital markets, all sorts of different industries we've done education in. So we started out as an education company, and one of my favorite topics was real estate. So we started moving into real estate and real estate development, and moved away from all of the other types of education and only focus on real estate now. So that's the only kind of education we provide. In the past, we provided education on a number of different topics, whatever the subject matter expert wanted us to teach on or design content on, that's what we did. But over the last around 6 years ago, we decided we were only going to start focusing on real estate. It's my passion. It's what we're really good at, and it stays within our unique ability. So we decided that that's the only education we're going to provide. And that's what we do now. We provide education in private lending, in private equity, and in properties. And as well as, you know, we host a camp every year where people can come and learn all about land development. So that's our focus, and that's how it started. And it started because Plentitude means wealth and abundance. And so that's why we chose that name. We chose the name Plentitude because of its meaning, its deep meaning around abundance and wealth and producing wealth and growing wealth together. So that's why we're called Plentitude.
Yeah, it's a great name. Actually, 观众朋友，那个 Plentitude 翻译成中文是丰盛地产。It means like plenty, it means abundant, right? In Chinese,
exactly.
A great translation. 丰盛地产。Thank you, Judi. And in your real estate investment journey, you've tried out different alternative financing approaches. Can you tell us about a couple of instances from your experience and the benefits they've provided?
Sure. Yeah. So one of the big things is when you first start out in real estate, you typically hit a wall. Because you have your primary residence, and then you go and you buy that first property or your first income property, and you need to qualify for that property, and or the property needs to qualify itself based on the rent that's coming in and whatnot. And depending on your income, it's not always easy to get financing. So what I learned is that B lenders or alternative lenders were very good at giving mortgages for rental properties. So my first property was just a small little townhouse, and I got an interest rate of 3.99%. My friends thought I was crazy. They thought that was so expensive because everybody else was paying, 2% because it was a difference between an A lender and a B lender. But at 3.99%, my numbers still worked. I was still cash flowing. So I said, well, I'm not going to turn down somebody who's giving me a mortgage with very little resistance. They were giving me a mortgage on this property with little resistance, and it was a B lender. It was a credit union. And so I took that financing, and the next time I went to get financing 5 months later, it became even more difficult because now they wanted more, and they wanted you to have more skin in the game. So I had to have 25% down. And so I went to a B lender again. And they gave me the financing, and that was great. Had to jump through a little bit more difficulty and a little bit more hoops because, it was 2 income properties in 5 months. So they were like, okay, I want more from you. So we gave them more. And then within a year, I was buying another property, but I was buying a vacation property. So it was a cottage rental business, which is difficult to finance. And so I shopped it everywhere. I went to mortgage brokers. I went to credit unions. I went all over the place trying to find financing on this. And what I found was a lot of people were giving me sort of a no. They were saying, oh, you can't have financing on this. So what I did is I went back to the seller and I asked for seller financing, also known as vendor take back financing. So what I did is I went to my seller and I said, hey, I'm having a lot of difficulty getting financing on your property because it's commercial. It's not typical financing, right? It's not the typical type of property that you want to get financing on. And so what we did is we negotiated 6.95% interest only. And so how I did that is I decided how much I could afford to pay. I could afford to pay $1,250 a month. So I reverse engineered that. I said to the seller, I can give you an extra $15,000 a year if you hold the financing for me. So I gave them the 35% down that I would have needed anyway with any commercial lender. So I gave her the 35% down, which was $115,000. I bought this property for $330,000. And my seller, the previous owner, held the mortgage for me for $215,000. And I gave them $1,250 a month every single month. So what that did is it gave them the opportunity to have some cash flow while still using the property as their collateral, right? So transfer of title happened immediately to me on closing. But what ended up happening is they were now the first mortgage holder. So on a property that they used to own. So they were very confident about this deal, because if something went wrong and I wasn't able to pay it and they needed to foreclose, well, they would just get back the property that they used to own anyway, right? They would go through the foreclosure process. They would have my down payment. They would be able to put it in for sale again. So it gave them a great deal of confidence in the deal. And it allowed me to get them closer to their goal. And the way I negotiated is I asked them, what's your plan? What are you doing with this money? And they said, well, you know, we're just going to give it to our financial advisor and they're going to invest it for me. So I said, you know, so you're doing this at your bank? And they said, yeah, we're just going to do it at our bank. I said, okay. Well, I knew for sure that banks were only giving 2% in a GIC guarantee. So what I did is I went to the seller and I said, hey, it doesn't make sense for you to hold this mortgage for me if the bank can give you more money. I can give you 6.95% guarantee. Go back to your bank, find out what they'll give you guaranteed, which I knew was going to be a GIC because that's how the banking world works. And I knew they were going to come back with 2%. So we had this discussion about the difference in holding a mortgage and the difference in putting their money in the bank with their financial planner and putting it in a guaranteed income fund, which would have been a GIC, right? So she called me about 45 minutes later and said, Judi, you won't believe this. They only want to give me 2%. And I said, well, sure, because they're going to put you in a GIC. I said, I can give you almost 7%. Are you interested? And she said, yes. The benefit to the seller, the best benefit to the seller is they get to defer their capital gains. They're able to defer their capital gains on the property because it was an income generating property for them. They didn't have to pay all of the capital gains on the sale of the property. So they had initially told me that they would give me 1 year. So we closed in November 30th. They said that by the next year, I had to pay out this mortgage. But when I taught them about the benefits of vendor take-back financing and how they could defer their capital gains for up to 5 years, after the first year, they extended the vendor take-back financing. I didn't have to get financing. They asked me to extend it, and I extended it for their benefit. So we didn't actually pay out this loan. I think we bought it in 2019. We extended in 2017 we bought it. We extended in 2018. We extended again in 2019 so that we didn't close on financing with them until July of 2020. So they were able to defer their capital gain 2017, 18, 19, and 20. So they got 4 years of deferral because they held the vendor take back financing, and really they only held the financing for about 2.5 years, but they got 4 years out of it. So it was kind of a strategic move. I've done vendor take back financing with a lot of my deals now. I have one in Windsor right now where the seller is holding the financing. I've got one in Hamilton where they're holding $3.5 million in financing on a development project. It's a really good strategy to assist the seller from a tax benefit, but also to allow them the opportunity to make more money on the deal because they're getting money every single month. So I've done 3 or 4 VTBs. I love them. I think they're a great way of financing. And I've done it on the reverse side as well. I've done a rent to own where I've helped families get into home ownership by offering them a rent to own. So that's a couple of different strategies. I'm looking forward to the course that we're going to be building. and teaching your folks, because we're going to do a course on building your real estate portfolio without A lenders. And I'm going to talk all about that. I'm going to talk about rent to own and vendor take back and seller financing and all of that, and how it's helped me build my portfolio. And we went from zero to a $200 million portfolio in less than 5 years. So, and a lot of that is through creative financing.
Yes, that's great. We actually can't wait for it. Folks, Judi is going to come to a 58 home and start her training courses later in October. Judi 会来我们房东网讲坛开课了啊！刚刚像 Judi 讲的 VTB 啊和 Rent to Own RTO, right? We've been talking about these topics actually recently, VTB or Rent to Own a lot. But right. It is something that is new to us, to this society. I think we need more training, more courses.
Sure.
To let
well,
people...
I can help you with that. I've got
Please,
a lot of
that'd
education
be great.
and
That'd
training.
be great. In this fall, October, right? October.
Right.
Judi's coming. All right. So in the past 3-4 years during the pandemic, the challenges affected variety of industries, including real estate. We were hit, right? So how did you navigate the difficulties and continue your projects during the difficult time?
Yeah, I think the most important thing during COVID was to pay extra attention to our team. It's tough to feel confident in times of economic uncertainty. So any anxiety that you're experiencing is going to show up in your team twice. It's going to show up twofold. So if you're worried, they're worried, and they're going to really struggle to produce creativity and innovation that our business requires and relies on to grow. So that means your number one responsibility as an entrepreneur and a leader during times like this is to protect your team's confidence so that they'll continue doing what they're good at and what they're passionate about. So using their unique strengths and their unique ability to continue to contribute to the growth of the company and to support our future goals, that's one of the number one important things. And you start by prioritizing communication. Nobody likes working in the dark. So when your team knows what you want done and how you want it done and for what purpose, they're going to feel like they're more confident and that their livelihood is secure. Because that's one of the things during this economic time is that people's livelihoods were impacted. So we needed to take the time to recognize that and pay extra attention to our team. And take the time each day to offer genuine praise, honestly, for their work and celebrate their rewards and their heroism because they were working during tough times. And we have to show them that we're paying attention to that. So even something as simple as saying thank you goes a long way in making your team members feel valued and ensuring that they stick around, because that was a hard thing during the pandemic, was finding trades and finding people to stay on your project. So you have to pay extra attention to your existing customers. And so I consider my trades to be my customers. So you have to find out from them, what is their biggest danger? What's the thing that that you're going to help eliminate for them over the year? That was the same thing, the uncertainty of the project moving forward. So we had to work very closely with our trades and help them identify their biggest opportunities as well by staying with us and working through these sort of difficult times. It was really important for us to sort of fortify those partnerships and really leverage the strengths that we had inside of our network, particularly our trades, our team, that sort of thing. We had to lock down pricing. That was really important because the pricing was on the rise. And we learned very quickly in the first 3 months of the pandemic, we learned really quickly the importance of our contracts and our timestamps and the dates that we had negotiated for pricing, because we were building 3 luxury homes during the pandemic, and our cost of lumber went up $47,000 per house.
Wow.
So that comes right out of the profits, right? So we became very diligent about our contracts and keeping our costs down. And one of the things I did during the pandemic is my son works for me, and he was our project site supervisor. And it was a difficult time. So he asked me to move back to Pickering. So I was living up north at my retirement home and where I work from. And he said, you know, I need you to come here. I need you to work here on site. So we rented a house across the street from our project so that we could be on site 24/7. Sometimes it's not sexy and it's not romantic doing real estate. So I moved into this house across the street from our project, and I lived there for a year and a half while we finished it. And we just forged forward, really made sure that we kept our investors happy because we had a lot of other people's money in our deal. So the most important thing was capital preservation for us, ensuring that our investors got their money and that the project was going to finish and take us to completion. Because a lot of people weren't able to finish construction projects. So for us, it was really about just perseverance and keeping an eye on our trades and our team and communicating with them. Like, that was the biggest thing. The more we communicated and let everybody know what our goals were and setting expectations, the easier the project became and the quicker it got done. In the beginning, there was so much uncertainty during COVID, so much uncertainty, and just keeping people safe too, right? And having the right distancing and scheduling the trades so that they're not all working at the same time. It was an interesting challenge, but we got through it. I mean, I drove probably 8,000 kilometers in 10 days just finding appliances. I put a trailer on the back of my car.
That's crazy.
And my assistant sat in my car on a hotspot with the laptop, calling all of the different places. You couldn't get into anything, right? So we would just have to call the pro desk at every Home Depot and say, do you have this appliance? Do you have that? Do you have that? And we worked with a lot of our resources. So our team, my extended team, is like the pro desk or the contractor desk in all of these different building supply sources, right? So we just worked very closely with our teams, our external teams, and got what we needed to do, and we got it done. It was an interesting time, but we did it, and we're excited.
Great job on that. It's incredible.
Thank you.
I still remember when the stores were shut down. Home Depot shut down for multi times, and you have to buy things online or whatever, and then you can't go into the store. Actually, the guy's gonna bring your stuff,
and then it might not be the right stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Wow.
And he's in the parking lot. You don't know if it's the right stuff. So what was really fun for me is I had a really great contact in Pickering at the Home Depot there. And I would just call Steve up and I would say, hey, Steve, I really need your help. I'm looking for this. If we had a bobcat stuck in mud and it was going to freeze overnight if we didn't get it pulled out. And so we needed chains, great big, large chains and hooks and the whole bit to connect to our Zoom boom to pull machinery, right? We had one machine that was going to pull out the other machine, and but you couldn't go in the store to get this stuff. So I called the pro desk and I said, hey, it's Judi over at Rosebank. We're doing this, you know, remember me? And he's like, oh yeah, no problem. What do you need? And I told him what the problem was. They came out. We had such a great relationship with them that we didn't even pay. Like, we paid a week later. They came out. They gave me all the equipment I need. They brought it to my car. And I said, well, what should I pay you? Don't worry about it. We'll put it on we'll put an invoice together for you and you can pay for it the next time. I said, okay. So we had that turned around in 15 minutes, but it's all about relationship. Like, it's relationship with your trades, relationship with your service providers. And because we had that relationship, they were able to service us and give us what we needed in a time of need. And then we just continue to do business with them. And so if you treat your providers well, they treat you well as well.
That's so true. Yes, that is the Home Depot team is also part of your team, part of your power team, right? That's very important relationship.
Yeah, 100%.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really good. We survived. I mean, it wasn't the most profitable project I've ever done, but we survived it, and everybody got their money back out, and so I'm really proud of that. We built an amazing, we built some amazing homes, which was really nice.
Yeah. All right, Judi, it's incredibly exciting to know that you've been a real estate coach for more than 7 years.
Mhm.
What's even more thrilling is that your students across Canada has achieved remarkable success, with many of them now holding assets in the 8-figure range.
Mhm.
As a mentor and a coach in the real estate investment field, what advice would you give to aspiring investors who are just beginning in their journey?
Yeah, I think the most important thing when you're aspiring to be a real estate investor is to set goals, to set clear goals and to educate yourself. So educating yourself you begin by learning the various aspects of real estate investing, such as property types, financing options, marketing trends, local regulations. Knowledge is the key to making informed decisions. I loved a message that just came up in the chat here. It said, what's better, one $2 million house or two $1.2 million homes, or $2 million homes, or a $2 million property? If I had my choice, I'd pick two $1 million properties because it reduces my risk. My risk isn't all in one property. So for me, I would rather have two tenants and two separate properties than I would rather have one property, because in the end, they both appreciate at the same rate. So I think it is about educating and knowing your financing options and just educating yourself. But another thing is setting clear goals, defining what your investment objectives are, whether it's generating rental income, house flipping, whether you want a long-term property appreciation. Having clear goals helps you tailor your strategies accordingly. And another thing is you got to research local markets. A lot of people ask me, what's the Canadian real estate look like? Well, there are markets within markets within markets. Like I used to do townhouses in Hamilton in one townhouse development area. So it had a micro market, and I was able to force the appreciation in each of these properties. And every time I forced the appreciation and sold something in this townhouse complex, it actually increased the value of all of my properties across the board. So you can actually have influence over your own market when you're in a micro market, or if you buy houses on the same street or in the same community or neighborhood. It's really understanding the dynamics of the local real estate market, including supply and demand, and what the price trends are, as well as economic factors and what the projected growth is. This knowledge is going to help you with your investment choices. So I think if I gave my top 3 tips, I would say educate yourself, set clear goals, and research local markets. Those would be my top 3 tips. I have, more than that. I probably have about 10 or 12, but I really think that the top 3 are those 3 things that I just mentioned.
Yeah, those 3 are very important. Thank you, Judi, for the advices.
Mm-hmm.
So currently, your primary focus is on the Plentitude Real Estate Income Trust and the Plentitude Real Estate Development Trust.
Right.
Could you elaborate on the values that these 2 trusts offer to investors and the society?
Sure. Let's first talk about the development trust, okay? So I have a development trust, and our development trust is really an opportunity for people to get involved in real estate from a private equity perspective. And what they do is they invest in the trust or in the fund. They invest in the fund, and that fund develops properties. So, for example, we have a wonderful development in Hamilton called West Harbor. And the West Harbor development we're building 120 homes and in a condominium. So right beside the GO station in Hamilton, we've got this amazing property that we're going to build a 12-story apartment building on, and we're going to have about 120 units in it. And in that, people are able to invest with their registered funds or with cash into this trust or into this fund, and they get to share in the profits. So that's our equity fund, and people are sharing in the profits in the development. So they take about 3 years before we get to development, and we have multiple projects in that fund. So right now we have the West Harbor one. We have another one coming in Hamilton. It's going to be another 150 units, like townhouses, apartments, whatever, in right on the LRT, the light transit system. And so that fund focuses on properties that are being built to sell for resale. And what we do for our investors that are interested in investing in that fund is we also give them first right of refusal when the units become available and we go to pre-sales for the condominiums. We put that out to our investors first. They get first right of refusal. They're allowed to buy the properties before it goes to the public. And so that's a really good way to get into pre-construction because we offer those to our investors before we offer it to the public. So that's one of the funds that we have that's in land development. The income trust that we have is it's a little bit different. And although there's development projects in it, these development projects are things that we will keep. We're building a portfolio for our investors that will generate lifetime income for them. So the real estate income trust has a number of projects that are going in it. There are 5 different projects for several hundred properties are going in there. There's one in Huntsville that has 171 that we're developing. There's one in Hamilton with just 8 units. There's another one, 2 of them in Brantford for a total of 52 units. Another one in Windsor that's 50 units. What is interesting about the income trust is it allows you to actually diversify your risk because now you're going across the entire portfolio and you're not exposed to just one project. You're in the entire portfolio. So you're able to invest and have the benefit of the returns, not only on the development piece of it, because you're an equity partner in it. You get that equity lift when we build these units, but you also get to stay in the fund and generate monthly cash flow for the rest of your life if you want. Our expectation is that you're in the project for about 5 years, and it starts to generate income for you. Each year we have new projects that are generating income because not only do we build properties for income, we also purchase properties that are already revenue generating. So that's the difference between 2 of the funds. One of them is for resale. We build for resale. The other is we build to grow a portfolio, and our investors can get involved in either one of them or both of them if they want. And the minimum investment is only $5,000. So it's a small price point to get in, but it gives them an opportunity to invest in both funds if they want. So that's kind of the difference. Is one of them is for development and resale. The other is for development and keep. Like, let's keep it. Let's continue. I'm a big believer in buy and holds. So if you buy a property, you want to hold it so that you can continue to get all of the benefits out of it. You can get the passive appreciation, the active appreciation, which is what we're getting when we build them, but we're also getting the principal pay down every single year, and we're getting the cash flow every single month, which is great. So that's the difference between the 2 of them. David's going to be at your conference on September the 17th, right? Mm-hmm. You have that coming up. And he's going to be talking at great length about it. And we're happy to share any information if people want to know about those 2 funds.
Yeah. 观众朋友，Judi 刚刚谈论的 September 17th 就是咱们房东网的这个秋季联展。到 Judi 呢，他要去 Calgary， 他有冲突不能过来。到时候呢，他的助理 David 会来到咱们的联展上，给咱大家详细的讲解这2个 trust 是怎么回事啊。我们邀请 David 过来给我们讲解。Judi 呢要10月10号October 10th Judi is coming back again, right? So we can listen to her like more. Like we mentioned earlier, Judi, you've been invited by 58 Home to conduct a course in October and November. Can you share the values and the benefits of the course with us today, please?
Yeah, well, like I said, the number one thing is educating yourself, right? Educating yourself about different strategies. And what I want to teach people is how to build a portfolio without using A lenders, right? You don't need to use A lenders. I want to teach you how the difference between seller financing and VTB financing. We've got a great question in here that I'm going to get to in a minute, but I want to show you the difference between what is a VTB? What is seller financing? What is rent to own? How do I get a B lender? How do I make my project look attractive or the property look attractive to a lending institution so that I can get financing every single time? And what happens if I don't get financing? Where else do I go? What do I do? There's all sorts of different structures that I want to teach. I want to teach you about pooling people's money together and doing joint ventures, and also the idea of doing limited partnerships with people, or you know, how do you fund a big deal? So we're going to start with little deals, but as we go through, I think what will happen is people will start thinking bigger and thinking outside of the box. We're used to going to A lenders. We're used to going to the big banks. There's 5 big banks that, you know, pretty much hold us to our feet to the fire when it comes to financing. But there's actually thousands of lenders in Canada, thousands. But we always go to the bank first. And one of the things that's really important as well is leveraging mortgage brokers and really understanding how to evaluate a deal so that you see it as the lender sees it. Because we may think it's a great deal, but our lender may not. And so what I want to teach you is how to look at the deal, how to qualify the deal so that you get qualified with your lender. And if you can't get qualified, how do you get creative financing? How do you keep moving forward with the deal even when the bank says no? So that's what I want to teach you.
Awesome. Can't wait. Guys, Judi has gone through her power tree, and she's like single mom with 3 kids. Yeah. And she became what she is today. It's got to be something that is in her to make her what she is today. 我觉得啊，各位朋友，Judi有点像咱们认识的 Jennifer May 老师，是不是？都是他们那个年龄好像也差不多，都是很厉害。他们好学习，喜欢充实自己，然后呢，有一个创意的头脑 ，very creative mind, like the mindset is very creative. That's why you're so successful today. I think I've been telling about, you know, you're like the other mentor that we all know already. You guys are like, you know, pretty much share the same characteristic. That's what made you today, I think. That's awesome.
I think a lot of it is entrepreneurial mindset, right? It's it takes a different type of person to be an entrepreneur, and the really good thing about entrepreneurs and doing business with entrepreneurs is they are less risk averse than you, but they also are more risk averse because they don't have the security of, you know, having an income every single month. So they're doing an incredible amount of due diligence on a deal or on a project and all of that sort of thing, because if it's not successful, they don't get paid. It's not like I can go to work every day and even if I don't have a good day, I still get paid. If I don't have a good day, I'm not getting paid, right? So it is a different mindset, and you do have to be entrepreneurial. And, you know, I said, you know, one of the biggest things is coaching. I have a coach. I have a mentor. I think it's super important that even when you're in business and you're being successful is that you continuously strive to get more education and to educate yourself, educate your team, and keep doing that, because the more educated you are, the better decisions you make for yourself and the better decisions you make for investors as well that do business with you, because you're a custodian of their money, right? So it's really important that you educate yourself because you have a fiduciary responsibility, not to just them or your family. I own a family business, like you said, and my kids all work for me, and I've been a single mom for most of my life, and it is really important that we just continuously grow and continuously educate ourselves. And I mean, I love owning a family business because it means we're creating something generational, something that my children will have that will give to their children and their children, etc. You know, that's it is a different mindset, though. You're right.
Exactly. Yes, that's what made you today, right? So
100% is out of necessity, right? You know, one of the things I used to do as my kids were university students, and they all decided to go to university at the same time. You know, one was older than the others, but they all went to university at the same time. And, you know, as a single mom, how do you afford accommodations and food and all of that? I used to rent houses in other cities. I would rent the house for my kids, and my kids would have their friends live there, students, and those students would pay the rent to me, and I would pay the landlord. This is called sandwich leasing, but I would pay the landlord. And out of every property, we had at least $300 or $400 in extra cash flow, and my kids lived for free. They lived there for free. We had extra money. I was able to send them food money and grocery money, and they were living for free. So that's called sandwich leasing. And I used to do that as a single mom because it was the only way I could afford to support my kids while they were all in post-secondary education. But we did it. And, you know, so they understand the value of real estate, and I did it out of necessity. Like, honestly, it's like, I just thought I was super clever, and it turned out it was a strategy. It was an earned income strategy that I learned about later, you know, just through further education. So,
yeah. All three kids are with you today? You are working together?
Yeah. So my oldest son is a realtor, and he finds a lot of the properties and the land that we develop. And my youngest son is our site supervisor, and he's in construction. He has an architecture background and construction management background. So he does a lot of our on-site project management and trade relations. My daughter, Erica, she is our graphic designer and marketing individual. She does all of our communication. She does graphic design. She also worked in before we went to real estate, she also worked in my learning development company and did a lot of animation and content for our e-learning modules that we created for other people. So all three of my kids work in my business.
That's great. That's great. Family business.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm very happy with my question already. We do have some question came in the chat box. Judi, can you see the chat box?
Yep, I saw one from Mary here. What is the difference between seller financing and seller take-back financing? How can sellers save on tax on capital gain when they provide seller financing? Great question. Okay, so the difference between seller financing and vendor take-back financing, I'm going to give you an example of somebody I just coached and how they got financing that was seller financing, okay? So they wanted to buy a property down in Windsor. The house was going on the market for sale, and my friend staged the house, and she's somebody I coach. She was staging the house, and the lady said, "Oh, wow, this would be really nice if you could live here," because my friend was saying, "This is a one home. It's beautiful. I'd love to live here." And the lady said, "Oh, well, you should buy it then." And she said, "Well, I can't buy it unless you hold the financing for me, right? Unless you do a vendor take back." We thought at the time that the lady owned the house mortgage free. And so that she could just hold the mortgage for her, and she would give her a down payment, and she would hold the mortgage. When in fact, they had financing on it. They already had a mortgage on it. So what they did is they agreed that the seller of the house would actually go back to the bank and extend their mortgage for another 2 years. So the house is still in the owner's original name, right? The mortgage is in their name, and it's kind of like a rent to own. But they went back, they refinanced. So let's just imagine it's $1 million. I'm going to give you a real life example. It was $1 million property. There was already financing on it for $500,000. If the seller were to sell it for $1 million, she would walk away with $1 million, right? Let's just pretend there's no expenses, right? For the sale of the house, she would walk away for $1 million, which would mean the buyer would put 5, 10, 20% in. Let's say she put 20% in, which is $200,000. The seller then would get the $800,000 from the bank, right? Because the buyer goes and gets a mortgage, and the bank gives them 80% loan to value. So the seller is getting the accumulation of the 80% mortgage that the buyer is getting, plus the 20% down payment, giving them a total of $1 million, right? So that's a normal traditional sale, is the buyer finances it. In this case, the seller went and refinanced their house, brought it up to 80% loan to value, right? They would have only got 300,000 on that difference anyway, right? Because they still owe 500. So they would have got 300,000. The buyer gives them $200,000 as a deposit, plus they got 300 from the bank. So their net is 500, which is exactly what they would have got if they sold the house, right? Because they had a $500,000 mortgage. So in that case, the seller financed the loan. The buyer, who will buy it in 2 years, it's a rent-to-own agreement. The seller refinanced. The buyer is paying the mortgage, the property tax, the insurance, and giving the seller just a little bit more cash flow for their troubles. Okay? So what ended up happening is the reason the seller was selling is because they were buying something else and they needed the money for renovations. So once we solved the problem of how do we give them their money for the renovation without selling the property, they ended up giving them their down payment. Now they have their renovation money. They refinanced their house. They got an extra 300 out, and the sale is going to happen in 2 years. So that's seller financing. If it were vendor take-back financing, they would need to hold the mortgage for $500,000 difference, for example, and the buyer would have had to pay out that first mortgage. So there is a bit of a difference. I'm going to go into it at great length in our course. I'm going to show you differences. I'm going to show you the math on how it works. But that's exactly what we're going to be teaching you is the difference between seller financing and vendor take-back financing and rent-to-own financing. They are powerful strategies to get into home ownership. Rent-to-own is an amazing way to buy properties because you can hedge your bets and buy properties and lock in that price today with the hope that it'll go up in the future. Just like pre-construction, right? We hedge our bets, we buy something in advance, and it's the same thing. You're getting it under contract, they can't sell it from underneath you, and you're able to do that. The difference is seller financing, transfer of ownership doesn't happen until later, as in a rent-to-own and seller financing, whereas a vendor take-back financing, the transfer of ownership happens on the closing day with the buyer now maintaining title on that property. So that's the main difference. But if a seller offers vendor take-back financing, the government allows the capital gains deferral. It's nothing you have to do. The accountants take care of it all, and they just manage that for you. But they get to defer some of their capital gains for up to 5 years. Okay. In a first position mortgage, they can defer 100% of the capital gain if they are holding 100% of the financing. In a second position mortgage, they can defer 10% of the capital gain. So it depends on what position they're in, first or second. Okay, so I know that's it's a long-winded answer, but in our course, I promise you, I'm gonna show you examples and teach you exactly how to do it.
Mara, you're convinced? You're gonna sign up for the course or what? Judy's gonna talk about this during her course, right? So you guys are all welcome to sign up for the course in October and November. Let's move to the next question.
Okay. Dear expert, a tenant registered a rental house for a company without permission. After he moved out of the house, how to let him deregister the property? That's more of a landlord, tenant, and legal. I don't give tax and legal advice, so I think you need to speak to a lawyer on this one. Also, because if they have a registered lien or they have something on the property, they shouldn't have a rental house. I may be misunderstanding this question. A rental house for a company without permission. They shouldn't be able to put anything on title or a lien on your property without you knowing. So to deregister it, you do need to speak to a lawyer and they'll handle that for you. If you have title insurance, it's a lot easier. So talk to your lawyer and find out whether you have title insurance on that property. That'll help you maintain title of your property.
Yeah. Or could it mean when when Mr. Wang says register, could he means that he just registered the address as his company? For
a
his company.
registered
I
a
think
tenant
it's
registered a
quite
tenant
easy
house for a
to
company without
change,
permission
right?
after he moved out of the house. How do you let him deregister the property? Well, you're the owner of the property, and if you can prove that you're the owner of the property, you should
Yeah,
be able to
kind
divert
of.
mail or do a return to sender on the mail. You just have to work with Canada Post on that. But I'm not sure exactly what the question is, so I think we need a
Yeah,
little more
we're not
clarification.
quite sure. But
How
if
do you
only,
deal with the? Sorry, go ahead, Simon.
I think it's if the tenant only registered the address for his company's, mailing address or company address, it's quite easy to fix, in my opinion. It's just ask
Yeah.
him to, register his company to another address
Yeah.
where he moved to, right? So I think
Exactly.
it's not a big deal. I
Yeah,
think.
it's not a big deal. They can move their
Yeah.
address and do a change of address. The challenge is, and I've tried this with my corporation, if you don't actually go to CRA and re-register a new address on your
Yep.
corporation and hand them a new articles of incorporation, Canada Post won't reroute the mail. So
Yeah.
you have to have a new a change of address in your articles of incorporation in order to reroute mail, or Canada Post won't do it for you. You have to prove the address of the corporation.
Yeah, it's a little complicated, but it's not
A bit complicated, but it's a
not
Canada Post and a legal thing.
Yeah.
How do you deal with high interest rate situation now? Any suggestions for investors? Absolutely. And there's another question that goes with this, so I'm going to answer both at the same time. Considering this high mortgage rate, which is more important to you? Let's say as investors, cash flow or appreciation. So one of the things I never do in real estate is speculate appreciation. Appreciation is speculative. So I don't do that. What's most important to me is cash flow, because cash flow, I can guarantee. The way I can guarantee that is I enter into a fixed mortgage. If you're in a variable rate right now and you're paying 7.25 interest and you're afraid that the rates are going to go up and down and whatever, a lot of people hedge their bets and they decide, you know what, I'm just going to stay tight. I'm going to let the variable rate go up and down and it doesn't matter to me. That's fine if you're cash flowing. That's fine if you can support it. If you can't support it and cash flow and it's getting really tight, then you may want to get into a 1-year fixed mortgage and just see how the economy looks a year from now. Don't lock in for 5 years. Things are going to change. We don't know what's going to happen in five years. It could get better. It could get worse. But every year we're closer to knowing when it's going to come to an end, right? So I would lock in for 1 year. Cash flow is really important to me. Even though, so this is a kind of a neat question. It's a really good question, because I rented a house once to a refugee family, and I was cash flowing $1. $1. I didn't care if I made $100 or $200 or $300. I wanted to help this family. So they paid the mortgage, they paid the insurance, and they paid the property taxes. I wasn't making any extra money. They paid their own utilities. I was making $1, $12 a year. And everybody kept saying to me, rent, increase the rent, you need a new tenant, and all this sort of thing. But that wasn't my goal. They were taking such amazing care of my property. They were paying their own utilities. I knew that I had a solid tenant in place. So having that solid tenant in place was more important to me than cash flow, because it was breaking even. So what I did is I allowed myself to break even theoretically for a couple of years, and the appreciation in that market took care of me. It took care of the property. It took care of everything, right? So never sell in a downturn market. People worry about, appreciation's gone down or the value of my house has gone down. So what? Don't sell. Just wait. Wait it out. If you can wait it out and you can afford to wait it out, then wait it out. A lot of people are panic selling. There's nothing worse than panic selling. When people are fearful, there's tons of opportunities as real estate investors. So I think it's important just to see what other people are doing. If somebody's jumping ship, that's an opportunity perhaps. I like to break even on my properties because this is a long game, right? This is the long game. We don't need to make our money every single month if we make it in the future. because you're getting principal pay down every single month. Somebody's paying your principal recapture. Every single month you're breaking even, or you've got $1 or $2 or $100 in cash flow. And hopefully every single month you get some appreciation. But don't discount the fact that your mortgage is being paid for by somebody else. You're winning every month when that's happening. So I think that's important to recognize, okay? Because there's many ways to win in real estate. I believe there's 5 ways. One of them is cash flow. One of them is principal recapture. Another one is passive appreciation. The fourth one is active appreciation. So how much renovation are you putting in it to increase the value of a property? And the fifth one that not a lot of people talk about is leverage. If you can leverage that property with the right mortgage property or product on that, and you can leverage it and access some of that hidden equity, you can take that equity out and you can lend it, or you can buy another property, or you can invest in equity, like in an equity project. But if you're leveraging that property and doing something else with it, you're winning again, right? So that's my long-winded answer to cash flow versus appreciation. I think both are important, but breaking even is the most important, and considering locking in your mortgage for right now, even if it's just for 1 year. Don't lock in for 5, do it for 1 year. Okay?
Because you don't know for sure what's going to happen in the future, right?
Yep. Exactly. If I had a crystal ball, we'd all be rich, right?
Yeah.
We'd all be super rich.
So true, yes.
If I can refinance my rental property, the money should be used to buy another rental property or buy new main residence or pay back my current main property. Okay, so what I want you to do is Google the Smith maneuver. Okay, the Smith maneuver is a strategy you use when you take your rental income and you pay down your primary residence to get more money out of your primary residence. Remember I said that mortgage product was really important? Imagine having a product on your home where, I'm going to talk about a primary residence first. Okay, so we've got a primary residence, and I've got, I'm going to make it really simple math. Let's say I bought it for $100,000, and I know we're in the GTA and that never happens, but let's just pretend. So I bought it for $100,000, and my mortgage when I bought it was, let's say, $80,000, because I put $20,000 down. Every year I pay down a portion of my mortgage, right? If I have the right product, right mortgage product on my property, I should be able to access that principal recapture, that equity that I'm paying down. So let's say I started with $80,000 and I have a line of credit that's attached to my mortgage. It's a home equity line of credit. People call it a HELOC or a home equity line of credit. Scotiabank calls it a STEP, TD calls it a flex line. There's all these different names for it, okay? So let's imagine that I've got this line of credit and I started out with $0. I don't have any equity in it, right? I've got my $80,000 mortgage, my 20% down is my equity, but they won't allow us to go all the way up to 80%, right? Or beyond 80%. But I paid my first year off, and let's say I got $1,000 off my mortgage. What's going to happen is I owe $79,000 and I have $1,000 available to me in a line of credit. Next year, I owe $78,000 and I have $2,000 available to me in a line of credit. So what they give you is a blended product that never goes more than 80% loan to value. So if it's me, I'm going to put that really amazing product on every property that I own, particularly my primary residence. Because imagine I'm allowed to put 20% of my mortgage down on my property, okay, on my primary. Let's say I made a whole ton of money in rental properties. Let's say I made $10,000 in income, okay, in cash flow on my rental properties. I'm going to take that $10,000. I'm going to drop it into my primary mortgage. I'm going to pay that off once a year. Guess what happened to that $10,000? It's still available to me because I have the right mortgage product on my house. So now my $80,000 mortgage went to $70,000, but I have $10,000 available to me on my line of credit to use again, right? Now you can just go out and use that rental income and go lend it if you want, or go buy another property or do whatever. What's important is you defining clearly what your goals are. Is your goal to pay down your primary residence? Is it to own 15 properties or 100 properties or 1,000 properties? It's up to you where you put that money, but it comes down to a tax question. So you need to talk to your accountant about where is the best place to put that money so that you're paying less tax. If you're paying less tax, you have more money in your jeans than in somebody else's, right? So it's a tax question. It's a planning question. It really comes down to, what do I want to see? I believe that everyone should own their homes mortgage free, because that gives you the most level of security in the future, but it also means that it's available to you to leverage. So put that good product on it, make sure it's on there while you're working, while you're employed, get that great mortgage on there, and get that line of credit set up so that in times of economic distress, we have our equity available for us if we need it, okay? So that's my 2 cents on that, is about, I think it was about refinancing and paying back the main. Also, I want you to do some research on the Smith maneuver, okay? The Smith maneuver is when you pay down your primary residence and you use the equity in your primary residence to do investing, and you're able to write off the interest of that HELOC against your taxes. So it's just it's a tax savings. You can look that up. Smith maneuver is what it's called. Okay.
Guys, as a reminder, Judi been working a long day today. She started working 7 a.m. every day, actually. She goes to bed 9 p.m. So we have to let her go by 8:45, or maybe we'll take 2 more questions. So if you guys do have your question, make sure to type in like soon as possible. Right? We have to let her go by 8:45.
I love this question. I love this question here.
The last one?
If cash flow is more important, does it mean that buying properties in small cities around GTA would be a better option comparing to invest in the GTA? Small cities, for example, Coburg, Port Hope, Peterborough. What I love about this question is one of my favorite sayings: drive till you qualify.
Drive till you qualify.
Drive till you qualify. So my son, my youngest son, is moving to Saskatchewan at the end of September. We're actually investing in Saskatchewan. We've got a land development deal that we're picking up. We're buying land for $65,000. So it's a house for $65,000, a 3-bedroom house. We can income suite it all day long. We can add an auxiliary dwelling unit in the backyard. We can sever this land, put another building on it, do all of this stuff to start off with $65,000. So what we're doing is driving till he qualifies. He's going to buy in a less expensive town because that's what his affordability is. And with the interest rates being what they are right now, we all know that's impacting our affordability, right? So you've got 2 choices right now. You can buy in a smaller market. Don't buy in the middle of nowhere because nobody wants to finance that, right? You want to buy in a market. Do a little research. Anywhere where they're building an Amazon warehouse is a good place to build, okay? Or to buy. Anywhere where there's Amazon or Starbucks, okay? If you can find a Starbucks in the town, you can find a Tim Hortons in the town, or you can find an Amazon in this town or nearby within a few minutes, that's where you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck. And it's the smaller towns. Like we've bought houses north of Toronto. We just bought a whole bunch of land in Huntsville. Although Huntsville is kind of in the Muskokas, it's just a little bit north of Muskoka. We bought a bunch of land there, and we're building 171 homes, 24 townhomes, and the rest of them being, I think it's 161, something like that. Sorry, maybe 141. I can't remember. The total's 171, but it's townhomes and apartment buildings. And we bought them in a smaller market. And we're going to develop in a smaller market. Windsor is a smaller market. Coburg, Peterborough, like you said, Port Hope. Those are smaller markets, but they're A markets. So if you really want to know what's going on or where to buy, follow the train line, follow transportation. Wherever big city highways are that are just off of the main ways, you want to be in a town near there because there's transportation. If there's transportation, there's going to be services. And, you know, things are growing. They're sort of sprawling. So keep in mind, drive till you qualify. Find out what you qualify for. That is the number one important thing to do as a real estate investor, is to know what you qualify for. A lot of people go and put offers in on properties and they don't even know if they qualify. That's the silliest thing ever. Go get a pre-approval from a mortgage broker, and they will tell you what you qualify for fundamentally based on your income and what you have as a down payment. Then you start shopping. Start shopping when you know what's in your wallet. Okay, there's no point in shopping if you don't know what's in your wallet. So that's the number one thing, is pre-qualify. Get yourself pre-qualified, find out what you qualify for, and then go decide what is the best use of my money. I always say to people, who want to put $200,000 down, but they're cash flowing $100. It's like, what is your goal right now? Are you trying for cash flow, or are you playing the long game of getting this property and having the principal pay down and having the appreciation in the future? Are you holding this for 30 years? What's your plan? If your need is immediate cash flow, then you shouldn't be putting your money into a property. You should be private lending or doing private equity. So there's the difference, right? Is what's your goal? How else could I use that money to get me to my financial goal? So that's why I say set clear goals. Set the goal, figure out how much money you need to make, and don't just put an offer in on a property because you like it. Remember, you don't have to live in it. Somebody else is going to live in it.
So
it doesn't need to be where you would live. It needs to be where somebody else would live and give you cash flow. Okay.
Yeah. I think
all right. What else do we have?
Yeah.
Did I answer them all?
I think so, yes. Let's make sure that we don't miss anything.
Yeah, I don't want to miss any. So. If anybody has a question, drop it into the chat. We're here for a few more minutes. If you have another question, I'm happy to answer it.
Yeah. Hurry up. 12 minutes.
TikTok.
TikTok. Judi has to go.
No, it's been a good discussion. I mean, I think it's been an interesting time right now with the interest rates the way that they are. I often say that people should be planning right now. They should be figuring out what's in their portfolio. What do they want to do? Figure out your lifestyle that you want. What are your expenses? Find out how much you can qualify for. And if you don't qualify, start learning about alternative strategies so that you can go to B lenders or learn about vendor take-back financing so that you can still present offers to people. I ask for a vendor take-back on every single offer that I put in.
Oh.
It's the one thing they cross out. I love it when they cross it out because I'm giving them something when I accept that. Will you share the sample of the contact for the VTB or rent to own in the course? A sample of the contact or the contract? Yes, I will send you a sample contract for sure. I think you mean contract. We'll share a sample of how we do the VTB and how we do the rent to own in the course for sure. And I'll be able to give you a template on the rent to own, how to do that, as well as the language that needs to be in your contract when you're asking for vendor take back financing. It's very important to get the language right when you're putting it in your offer. Okay. But yes, that will be in the course. Those contracts and the language and the templates will be there and be available for you.
Awesome.
So it's an amazing strategy for building a portfolio.
Awesome. Lily, would you sign up for the course? Are you satisfied?
Yeah, Lily, I hope to see you there.
She will. Yeah, we'll see you there. October, eh?
Yeah, October. Right. I think we start October 24th. Is that course?
So if you don't have any question, I think I'll have a quick one for Judi.
Okay.
Just to wrap it up. What do you think of the housing market this year? Say this year, short term. Do you think it's gonna go down a bit, hike a bit, or what?
That's an interesting question because I said, well, how's the Canadian market, right? It depends. It really depends on where you're talking about in the housing market. I think there's a need for housing, a significant need for housing. Yeah. We focus on affordable and senior housing. That's something we're focusing on. So I think what needs to happen is there needs to be more supply. And we've had some interesting changes in with Bill 23 that Doug Ford just put through on November 28th. And what was interesting about the changes is you can actually create your own housing market. You can create your own opportunities. I don't know if everybody knows this, but with Bill 23, one of the really great things about owning a single family home right now, you need to zone it to turn that property, if it's zoned residential, into a triplex property. And what I mean by that is typically if I wanted to add an income suite and it wasn't zoned for multifamily, I couldn't do it. Now you can. Legislation says that you can, so long as you get a building permit, you can put an income suite in there. Please get building permits. It's super important. It's important for the health and safety of everybody involved. So get building permits, put an income suite in your basement. That can be your first income suite. That can be your first income property, is to add it to your own property. You can also add auxiliary dwelling units to your own property right now. So you can add an ADU, and there's a website called ADU Search. And if you go to ADU Search, you'll be able to put your address in and see whether you're allowed to put an ADU, an auxiliary dwelling unit, in your own backyard, which is amazing. That means you don't need to be zoned for an additional building on your land. If you've got the space and the bylaws permit adding a building of a certain size on your property, you can do it. You just need a building permit. So a lot of people in Ontario are going from single family homes to 3 dwellings on property without having to buy anything else. That is the biggest bang for your buck right now, because there's no land transfer tax. You don't have to pay for that. You don't have to pay closing costs. You don't have to pay, if you're selling, you don't have to pay realtor fees. Remember, even if you're buying, you're paying realtor fees. You just don't see them. They're building that into the price of the house, right? So in order for you to add income suites, you can do it right now with what you own. You can do it in your own basement, and you can do it in your backyard or your side yard if you have the space. So I think it's important that we look at our existing properties, look at our existing opportunity and our existing house and say, what else can I do with this house? Anytime you buy a property, you should say, what else can I do with it? Primary residences are great, but they're also a really great way to go buy something with only 5% down. So let's imagine, Simon, you live in your primary residence right now and you bought it with 5% down. I can move. I can go to my next primary residence for another 5% down and house hop. And that lets me preserve my down payment money. And I rent my first house. You can go back to your dream home. You can go back to it later. But in the meantime, let somebody else pay for it for you and go live in another house with 5% down. And then once you get that all settled out and you get your income suite in it, move again and go do another 5% down. I love families that have little kids because they're portable. They don't need to be home. They can go with you. They haven't even got to school yet, right? So like if you're not in school and you can afford to move in your community, and you can do it for 5% down, that's called house hacking. It's one of the best ways to get income properties under your belt with very little money down.
Awesome. Great advices. Thank you so much, Judi. The time is 8:45.
All right. And Lily has a question about how much the course is, but I'm sure that you're going to send that out in communication.
Yes,
I don't know the
later.
answer to that.
Yes,
That's you
later
guys.
on. Yeah, Judi, don't worry. If Judi's coming back on October 10th again online, and on September 17th, Sunday, Judi's assistant David will be there himself and talk about more of Plentitude and the training courses and everything you want to know. Thank you again.
You're welcome
for your time, Judi, and thank to all of you, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye. And
Excellent.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.